Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Woodbrew video. My name is Dylan.
And I'm Molly.
And if you guys are new to the channel, Molly and I started a custom woodworking business right out of high school. We've been doing YouTube videos for almost 4 years now, and we recently went basically full-time in the online content space. And we've created so many videos on this channel about woodworking and how to start a business and just so many cool DIY projects. So if you haven't checked out some of our other videos, I highly recommend it. Looking at the analytics of our channel, we can see that so many of you guys aren't actually subscribed watching these videos. So if you have just a second, just hit the subscribe button. It's free. If you don't like us in a week, you can unsubscribe, but just hit subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos.
In today's video, we're building a Plyo box out of 1 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. Everything we use in this video will be listed down in the description below. We also have a free set of project plans that will help make this build easier if you want to build it yourself. With all that out of the way, let's get started.
Okay guys, so in the first step of this project, we have our sheet of plywood laid out. We actually have a piece of foam underneath our plywood so we don't cut into the table. And we're gonna be using a circular saw to break down our sheet of plywood. You can use a circular saw for this entire build. You don't need a table saw. And the way you do that is by using something that's straight, like our guide here. And what you need to do is you need to measure from the edge of the saw over to the blade and see how far that is. And you'll just have to add that measurement so that when you put your saw on here, you end up cutting in the correct spot. It's not hard to do, and it will allow you to make this entire project using a circular saw. So we've gotten to the part of this build where I've created these sort of cutout pieces here that are gonna be all the way around. You can see there's kind of like tabs that stick out, and this is what's gonna allow this entire thing to sort of puzzle piece together and give it a lot of strength. But cutting these pieces out can be a little bit tricky. I'm gonna show you the way that I'm gonna do it, and then show you a way that you can do it as well if you don't have a table saw. So here's the thing, is I'm gonna set my table saw up to 3/4 of an inch, but if I did that, then this blade thickness would actually make the cut like a little bit over 3/4 of an inch. So what I need to do is I actually need to set up my saw to where it is 3/4 of an inch minus the thickness of the blade, so that when I push my board in like this, that it's actually gonna cut in the right spot. Also, a thing to note whenever you're doing stuff like this is that if you look at the blade, when I have it the height that it probably should be to just cut regular plywood, you can see that if I were to cut up to a line here, this blade would be cutting into the board all through this section as well. So what we want to do is we want to raise that blade up as high as it'll go, which is generally speaking not the safest thing, so you're gonna want to practice even more safety whenever you're doing this. Keep your hands really far away from the blade. But what that does is that, as you can see, if we were cutting in right here, that this blade doesn't go much further past the actual cut. That's roughly where we would be cutting the plywood, and this barely extends any further. Meaning that I can go pretty much all the way up to my line and not be cutting further into the board. I'm actually gonna go all the way up to the line. I'm gonna let it cut through the board, but I'm gonna make sure that I put all of these lines on the outside facing parts so that when it actually cuts into it, it'll be on the inside and you'll never actually see it. This is probably the easiest, most accurate way to do a cut like this, but I'll show you some other methods a little bit later. So in order to cut this piece out here, we're going to use a table saw again. This time I've set the blade to just under the total thickness of the plywood. We won't have to cut all the way through because we already have part of it cut. Then I screwed this just scrap to my miter gauge, which just runs in this slot right here. This should come with your table saw. And what that's going to allow me to do is just give me more support when I'm controlling this large board. I've gone ahead and I've ran it through the blade once so that I know where this is actually gonna cut, which helps me roughly line it up. But then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it up to the blade and eyeball it like this, and then you can clamp it if you're uncomfortable, and then run it through just like that. Alright guys, so with the tabs cut out, we also have to make some recesses for these tabs to fit in on certain boards. For instance, on this one, it has tabs on this side and recesses or dados, whatever you want to call them, rabbets. And on this one, it has nothing but recesses. There's going to be no tabs sticking out. And these are a little bit more difficult to make than the tabs like this one. So I'll show you how we've done it using the table saw, and again, in a little bit, I'll show you how to do it without a table saw. So I've drawn where my table saw blade is. If I raise it up and use a square here, if I use a square here, you can see I've drawn where my blade comes up and is above the table on both sides. And now what I've done is I can use those, oh God. So now what I do is I line this up in the middle of those two lines. Then I'm going to take a clamp. I'm going to clamp it down to the edge of my table saw on both sides. And I'm going to turn the saw on with the blade down completely and slowly raise it up. And you'll see that I end up stopping somewhere in this range so that again the radius of the blade doesn't start cutting into our side piece. Now this is a bit of an advanced table saw technique, but if done properly with this clamp down to the table and with your hand applying some pressure down, you can even put multiple clamps across here if you'd like. This is relatively safe. Now that we have this area cut out, all we have to do is use a jigsaw, or you could use a handsaw, and cut this tiny little piece out right here, and most of it's already cut away, so I'm just going to use a jigsaw to do that. That's all we gotta do. I'm just gonna go around and do that to the rest of them.
I'll show you how to do it without a table saw.
I think I've said that like 6 times in this video, and I never actually filmed a way to show you how to do this. So let's head out to the shop and I'll show you real quick. All right guys, I'm gonna show you how to use a circular saw to do everything that I did with the table saw. So looking at this board, I made a little bit of a mock-up. So this part here is a tab. I've already cut this piece. And then over here, this is gonna be one of those recesses. So I'm gonna show you how to do both now. The first thing you need to do is you need to clamp a straight edge to your board the right distance away from the cut, just so that your blade hits the right spot. And then we're just gonna cut all the way up to this line. Again, we're gonna keep the blade as far out of the saw as possible, the same way we did with the table saw. So in order to make this cut right here, we can use a handsaw or a jigsaw. We're gonna use a speed square as a guide. We're gonna line it up with our line right there and then cut all the way through. So now we're gonna do this recessed area here. We're gonna use the jigsaw again, same method to cut the first line, and then we're gonna come in at an angle and then go that way, and then come back this way to complete this inside cut. Just like that, we've got it cut out using just a jigsaw.
So we used our X-Carve to carve in some things into the front of our box. We did some numbers on each corner, which kind of correlate to the height of the box. So whichever way the box is flipped over, you know how high it is. And we also did our client's logo in the middle. Now we could have painted the inside of the letters and numbers, but I think we're going to get creative with the epoxy over here and do one of our client's colors mixed in with the epoxy and pouring it in. Also guys, if you don't have a Also guys, if you don't have a CNC machine, you can also...
that wasn't focused. Now it is.
Also guys, if you don't have a CNC machine, you can also paint on the numbers and logo too. So you guys know how much we love Total Boat. They've been a big supporter over the last few years of our channel, and they are this week's video sponsor. We are using their high performance epoxy resin, and they also sell these powders and dyes where you can mix in the epoxy and make fun colors. What makes this stuff great though is these pumps. This is a 2-to-1 ratio, and all you need to do is pump one of each, and it automatically mixes the formula for you. So we're gonna start mixing up our epoxy and adding in some dyes. We're gonna be making a custom color. We're making the color purple, and then we're going to be pouring it into our logo and the numbers. Now what makes this really easy is if you can use a syringe and you can put it exactly where you need it to be, but we're going to be doing a different method. We're going to be pouring it into this bag and then cutting off a small corner of it, and then you can put it exactly where we need it to be.
At least that's the theory.
That's the theory. Hopefully that works.
So have a little bit of a
just a little dilemma. We did a little test run here, and it basically just looks black.
I think it's a little purplish.
There's like the uttermost hint of purple. So I think we're just gonna redo this without using the black dye.
Okay. So what are we using?
Just the blue and the red. Because Barney said that blue and red make purple.
Oh. Wow. Okay. So while Molly continues to mix up a new batch, I'm actually gonna leave this batch this thick and show you guys the chemical reaction that happens with inside of epoxy as it's curing. You never really would want to pour this kind of epoxy this thick. Usually it's about 1/4 of an inch to maximum 1/2 of an inch thick that you can pour at one time. And I'll just show you what happens whenever you leave this just like this. So we'll come back to it in a little bit.
I want it to be on the record that it was not my idea to put black in here. It was Dylan's fault because he did not watch Barney as a child.
Well, did it turn out right this time at least?
Yeah, because I did it.
Well, let them see it.
See, my friends?
Wow.
That's
Scott folks.
You see, my friends?
Look at that.
That's purple.
All right.
Now we just gotta get into the bag.
Oh, moment of truth.
I'm nervous.
This is actually a little nerve-wracking.
Oh gosh, I need a better hand.
It's even coming out. Oh my gosh, alright, I'm gonna cut it just a little bit more.
Wait, I think if I just squeeze.
No, don't squeeze too much, you're gonna like blow it.
Okay.
Ooh. Is that too fast?
Oh, I got it. My legs are shaking. My legs are shaking.
You're doing great, sweetie.
I don't know how much.
A little bit more than that.
We're starting to go over the.
Well, don't move away from where it's going over.
I'm trying.
Alright, here's the toughest part.
Yeah.
Don't blow it.
Hush.
So while Molly was finishing this up and it was recording, I actually looked over here and both of these were smoking. You can actually probably see this actually kind of falling apart. So what happens is there's a lot of heat created with this chemical reaction, and that's why you can't pour it very thick. I wish you could see the smoke. It's not really showing up on camera, but you can see what it's done in here. And I cannot touch the bottom of this. It is incredibly hot. And in fact, I had them sitting here and I had to remove them because this whole thing was like lifting up. It got so hot. But, oh, it stinks too.
tilted over, Dylan, because that bottle is made so you don't have to tilt it.
Revolutionary guy let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the